Look closely at this woman in front of her Tesla. You might think she's just another woman, maybe a mother with a conventional outfit, but the person you see has nothing to do with this simplistic portrait. That woman is Cathie Wood, and at age 66, she is now the head of the investment firm ARK Invest, which manages $42 billion in assets. Forbes has ranked Cathie as the 53rd most influential woman on the planet in 2021, and the 79th in the ranking of the richest American self-made women. So sure, you might think she's just a lucky investor who bet on a young startup turned unicorn that propelled her straight to the top, or that she had help from rich friends, but not at all. In this video, I'll explain how Cathy Wood managed to crack Wall Street. In today's video, we'll start by looking at Cathy Wood's background and how she started her career and how ARK Invest came to be. Then we'll see how the company managed to achieve exponential growth thanks to a very specific strategy. Finally, I will show you how you too from your home can build an even more successful investment strategy than Cathy Wood's, thanks to investment in startups. Part 1. Early career, creation, and beginnings of ARK Invest. Catherine Duddy Wood was born in Los Angeles in 1955 to Irish immigrants. She graduated in 1981 with a bachelor's degree in finance and economics, but in 1977, 4 years before graduation, she began working in finance as an assistant economist at Capital Group. She then moved to New York City to work on Wall Street at big names like Jennison Associates and AllianceBernstein, where she already managed $5 billion. During these years, she became very interested in innovation and new technologies. She believes in the future of DNA sequencing, artificial intelligence, energy storage, robotics, autonomous cars, but also in a certain technology little known at the time called blockchain. One day, she proposed to her employer to create an ETF to invest in these new technologies. What is an ETF? ETF stands for Exchange Traded Funds, and it is a financial instrument that reproduces the variations of an index, such as the CAC 40, for example, up or down. If the CAC 40 goes up as a whole, the CAC 40 ETF goes up, and vice versa. Buying an ETF is like buying a kind of basket of shares in which you will find companies from different sectors, sometimes from different countries or of different sizes. This type of investment is very popular with individual investors because it is simple, diversified, efficient, and very inexpensive. In addition, you can choose what you invest in because there are a multitude of ETFs. ETFs by sector, video games, metaverse, luxury. By geography, emerging countries, Europe, United States. By company size, mid-cap, large-cap, etc., etc. But at AllianceBernstein, her ETF idea was considered too risky and rejected. Cathy decided to do it anyway on her own. She left the firm where she had worked for 12 years and founded ARK Invest in 2014. But how did Cathy Wood manage to make her company known? Part 2. What does ARK Invest invest in? To find out how Cathy Wood made a name for herself, let's take a closer look at ARK Invest's investment strategy and in particular its ETFs. ARK has built its success on innovation. A disruptive innovation is something that will create a break with the current market. In other words, it is a development that will create a new market. Usually when a new disruptive innovation arrives, the new market it creates explodes while the old one becomes obsolete. For example, the touchscreen smartphone like the iPhone is an innovation. After its release, the market for the classic phone with a clamshell or a physical keyboard totally collapsed, and the market for the smartphone with a touchscreen completely replaced it. But not all disruptive innovations succeed because they are new. A good counterexample of disruptive innovation that ended in a huge flop is Google Glass. Absolutely revolutionary. They offered advanced functionalities in glasses to be worn daily. Unfortunately for Google, the public was not ready for such a big revolution in 2013, and it was a flop at that time. Maybe we'll see them resurface in the near future with the rise of the metaverse, but that's not the subject of this video. But let's get back to ARK Invest. The investment fund's credo is to bet on innovative companies whose value will double over a period of 5 years. Cathy then created 4 ETFs. Innovation ETF, which will be the flagship product. It includes stocks such as Tesla, Zoom, or Shopify. Today, this ETF represents $25 billion under management. Next Generation Internet ETF, which today includes companies like Coinbase, Twitter, Twilio. Genomic Revolution ETF. And finally, Autonomous Technology and Robotics ETF, which contains shares of Tesla, UiPath, or Unity. She created others afterwards, like the FinTech Innovation ETF or the Space Exploration ETF, or a project of ETF based on the price of Bitcoin. Another way to get exposure, ARK Invest makes all research, analysis, transactions, and most importantly, makes its portfolio public. This is exactly like Elon Musk did with the patents of his company, Tesla. One might think that this is a dangerous strategy since with this public data, anyone can see the composition of the ETFs, and therefore buy directly the stocks most represented by it, without buying the ARK ETF. But in reality, investors see this as proof of transparency and honesty on the part of the investment fund. And many investors who do not have the time to copy everything manually prefer to buy these ETFs directly. To manage her ETFs, Cathy Wood did not choose the most experienced employees on Wall Street, and we can understand why she did this. The former employees of the New York Stock Exchange are rather used to traditional investments without too much risk, so she chose to surround herself with young analysts. You only have to scroll down the presentation page of Cathy's team to see that on the pictures, they are all in their 30s. But why surround yourself with such an inexperienced team? For 2 reasons. First, because they are willing to take risks with her. And second, because they are each specialized in very specific areas of interest to Cathy, which we mentioned earlier. All of this makes ARK Invest a very special fund. Special in its very design, and therefore highly criticized. Part 3. The Critics. Criticism of Cathy Wood and ARK has been swift and widespread. Obviously, when you manage tens of billions of dollars with a strategy that breaks the codes of Wall Street, you don't just make friends. The first line of attack from her detractors was her young team and her lack of experience in the financial markets. Critics also point to the high turnover within her teams, with analysts staying in place for only a short time. This would seem to demonstrate the company's inability to develop and retain talent. The second point is that the fund is too concentrated, meaning that for some, it is not diversified enough. To give an idea, in the main ARK Innovation Fund, only 10 stocks represent more than 50% of the investments. 53.02 as of August 1st, 2022. But moreover, as we have seen, it is particularly focused on technology, and is therefore accused of profiting from a bubble, and of being too risky. Well-known personalities of the financial world, such as Michael Burry, star of the movie The Big Short, are among these skeptics. The ultra-bearish investor has established a short position on the ARK Innovation ETF, i.e., he bet that this ETF will fall sharply during September 2021, before withdrawing his position in November. This lack of diversity means that by focusing only on technology, Cathy Wood is missing out on opportunities in other markets. This is the case for traditional cyclical sectors that have recently benefited from the economic recovery and have therefore seen strong growth. To summarize, as you can see on this CNN front page from last September, investors who criticize Cathy Wood mainly accuse her of playing with fire by taking excessive risks in the markets. Part 4. The results. However the critics may say it, the results are there, and they are impressive. The Innovation ETF is ARK's leading ETF, with over $25 billion in assets at present, with an average increase of 38% between 2014 and 2021. The fund has therefore outperformed the S&P 500, which has averaged 13% over the same period. We're still talking about an outperformance of 25% per year, every year for 8 years. Incredible. But it is especially the last 2 years that are particularly interesting to analyze. First of all, 2020 was the best year in terms of profitability for Cathy Wood, since the ETF had a total return of plus 152%. This is absolutely huge, and it is especially from this figure that the opponents of Cathy's strategy raise their voices by crying speculative bubble scandal. But why such a good result? Well, it's simple. Tesla and Zoom, which are the two companies that weigh the most in the ETF, have both seen their share prices explode in the course of this year. To tell you 2 words, Tesla has achieved a score close to plus 750% and Zoom plus 500%. Unfortunately for her and all investors, the year 2021 did not go like her previous one. It was a cold shower for Cathy with a loss of negative 21.8%, while the S&P 500 gained plus 28.7%. While the opponents blame this bad result on the bubble that would have burst, the most faithful believers in ARK Invest assure that this bad result is due to the increase in interest rates by the Fed and other macroeconomic considerations. What is certain, however, is that Cathy Wood has made many predictions and claims that have come true. A first example comes from her prediction of May 2021, in which she assures that the current inflation will quickly turn into deflation, which has not been observed at all. In fact, the opposite is true, as inflation is still rising. Another example concerns oil prices. She assured that the price of oil would never rise above $70 a barrel after its fall during the year. According to her, the adoption of electric cars by more and more people would pull down the price of oil. It wasn't until a few months after this statement that we saw prices approaching $85. So here are some arguments in favor of the ARK Fund's critics, but none of them take away from the average success of the ETF since its inception, doing 3 times better than the S&P 500 with its own strategy. Despite all the warnings from Wall Street, and armed with a bunch of very inexperienced millennials, is an outstanding performance. Part 5. How to replicate Cathy Wood. Admittedly, everything I've told you is a great story about a self-made woman with a big success. But while Cathy has invested in some innovative companies, they were all already well established in the market. We agree that it has been very profitable, but that is not optimal. The ideal for any investor would be to invest in a company that will explode later to reach returns up to 100 times or 1,000 times. And for that, you have to succeed in investing from the beginning, when the innovation is proposed by a simple startup and not a listed company. But I see you coming. You say to yourself that you don't have the contacts to dive in. Well, actually you do. By watching this video, you already have a contact to invest in Silicon Valley startups. That's me. I've created a syndicate, Leonis Investissement, so that you too can put your money into startups that have just launched disruptive innovations that will create a new market. By going through Leonis Investissement, you will benefit like hundreds of investors who already do, from a private access to invest in startups from famous incubators such as Y Combinator, which has seen the birth of Silicon Valley giants like Airbnb, Dropbox, Coinbase, Twitch, Reddit, Stripe, OpenSea, etc. All this from $1,000 per investment. I propose to put at your disposal my network and all my contacts, which I have built up over the last 10 years so that you can invest in the unicorns of tomorrow. If you want more information or to join the syndicate, all the links are in the description.